Welcome to today's webinar. We're just going to have a chat with Jeff Uhlich on AI creativity and the shift from creator to curator. A insight that he shared with us that was reflected in the newsletter this week. And as artificial intelligence continues to master from how we create by drafting and composing and designing, our human value shifts. In this new age of creativity, success no longer lies in the execution, but in the intention. The why, not the how. The ability to discern, the ability to direct, the ability to define purpose or meaning. Jeff has explored how AI as a computational mirror reflects our values and our challenges, and it challenges us to remain curators of meaning in a world of infinite generation. So in this discussion, we're going to have a chat with Jeff. Welcome, Jeff. And for those that don't know you, that may be new to the webinar, most of us are commoners or friends in this network. But give me a couple of sentences to who you are and what your areas of interest are, and why this topic appealed to you.
Well, I think I'm pretty well known to members of the network. I've been attached. I know you from our days at KPMG together back in the early '90s. And we've stayed in touch more or less over the intervening years. And my career was mostly in HR, people management, organizational change in a variety of places here in Canada and also overseas, mostly in higher education and healthcare, but also in consulting. And for the last 2 years, 3 years, actually, I've been a student of all of the happenings around AI. And have been following it very closely as you have, Perry. We've kind of been joined at the hip on this stuff for the last 3 years. And I don't think we've seen, this isn't a blip as far as I'm concerned. It's not just a disruption. I think you and I have maybe landed on the discontinuity side of the equation. And in terms of how that article came about, well, the first webinar that you hosted on creativity as part of this series with Haley Simon. I think I was involved in some of the conversation after your presentation with her, and I made some comments about the computational mirror and also the work of Margaret Bowden, who talked about the 3 different types of creativity, which to me, and I remembered it from an article that I read some time ago, and I thought it was a useful framework, a useful model to talk about creativity, especially as it relates to AI and how that has changed or is changing what it means to be creative. So that brings us to today. So you asked me to follow up on those comments with an article, which I did, and now you've asked me to make some comments here, so here we are.
Well, I think we've all appreciated your insights, not just in your writing, but in the commentaries that we've had. So I've got high regard, even more regard than I had for you when we worked together at KPMG. So let me pose a couple of questions to you. You've said that AI can make things, but doesn't really understand them. Can you explain it in simple terms what humans can do that AI still can't, and why that even matters?
Well, as it relates to creativity, I think the important thing is that I don't think AI can make things, but AI can operate in realms that were previously the domain of humans, which is in terms of knowledge and understanding and textual communication. And that's, of course, now even extended to visual communication through audio and video. But what's different between us and what the current generation of large language models, which we commonly call AI, even though I think that's a misnomer, but how we're different is that we are embodied minds. We have real world experience. We're not just processing information and through a vast corpus of data that's been vectorized and assessed probabilistically. We actually have intent behind what we do and what we think, and we have emotions that are attached, and those things are reflective of our lived experience. And so we have understanding that goes beyond pattern recognition and synthesis and just regurgitation of textual information that's been ingested into a vast database. So I think that's the critical difference that still remains. And what I said in that article was that, as it happens, the current generation of AI happens to be really good at combinational creativity and at exploratory creativity. And the domain of humans, which is the transformational creativity, is still out of reach for the current generation of AI tools as we know them. So,
But it's interesting, one of the things that you've stirred in my thinking is, my background is neuroscience, and neuroscience is a study of how the brain does a lot of the things that the brain does, perception being one, which Tommy Nilsson has shared with us from time to time. But the brain and our mind and our sensory systems have the capacity to detect things that are visual, detect things that are auditory, detect things that are kinesthetic, which is muscle, detect things from smell, and detect things that trigger emotion as just one, in a way, other sense. Emotion, if you think of it, could be thought of just as another sense. That sense is not one that we've been able to figure out how AI would replicate, even though it may simulate emotion, which is empathy, and we've talked about that. So on another point, you've written that people are becoming curators instead of creators. What does it mean to be a curator? I'm not sure everybody understands, and how could that change the kinds of jobs or careers students might have in the future?
yeah, I think in terms of those two types of creativity that I think AI can really help humans with, I think it becomes a matter of choosing what to focus on. That in getting back to the intent that we talked about,
Hmm.
that's something that comes only from humans. The chatbot that's on the other side of your screen basically is inert and sitting there waiting for your input, and then it is reactive to that. It's now drawing on memory, which is an important advance, right? Other conversations, but it still starts with your initiating the conversation, if you want to call it that. And so I think the curation begins with that intent, and then employing the tools that we have at our disposal to generate possibilities, options that we can winnow and choose from, and use that to benefit the process that we're engaged in to get a better result. And there's plenty of examples. I shared one in the article from a Stanford study that was from back in 2022. I know it's come further than that. I shared an article with Mel just the other day about something called Nesterov's principle. It's
Hmm.
a mathematical proof that was just recently established. And in the research paper, the researchers acknowledged that they credited ChatGPT with a lot of the work that was done, and it generated many possible proofs, I guess, to this theorem, and 80% of them were wrong, but they chose from the ones that seemed to have some relevance to the question, and then just winnowed it down from there in a funnel, and they came up with a new proof that is valid, and they credit ChatGPT for helping them. And it was basically just grinding through option after option. It didn't come up with the right answer, but it gave them possibilities that they wouldn't have otherwise explored. And I think that's where they were orchestrating and curating the work of a large language model, and to great effect. And I think that possibility exists for all of us now in an extent, or to an extent, that just wasn't possible at any other time in history. And that's where I think it's profound.
It's amazing. I was sharing during the prelude to today's webinar with a few of you of using ChatGPT this week to try and sort through a series of ideas that I had about this rapid transition that's underway that seems to be getting more and more rapid, and using the metaphor of a wave, talking about entropy and introducing that Markov chain principle of big numbers. Very complex, very academic. I mean, I was getting lost in the ideas, but I threw them all on the table and I asked ChatGPT to go through them and test my logic. And it came up with a different hypothesis, slightly different from the one that I had generated, but it was incredibly, incredible value in terms of helping me sort through ideas that I had. So my job there was in the decision and the design and I guess the ethical judgment, but it was truly a partner in a process, and it was doing the how, and I was doing the why as to what I wanted it to do and toward what purpose. So
Right.
uh, I was impressed.
And I
On
think
another
that
front, yeah,
the comment about ethical judgment, that's the other thing that's so important, right? Is that you have to be guiding the technology with
right.
your experience and your wisdom. And I think there has to be an attitude going in with of one of healthy skepticism, right? You have to question every output because these systems still aren't perfect. They still will hallucinate. They still will make citations up. They still, make mistakes. And you've got to push back and use it as a thought partner rather than just accepting what it presents in its first instance. And
Well,
so,
I think that's where effective prompting. I mean, you're going to exercise your ethical judgment in your prompting, and you've received X, and now I want to look at X, but I want to look at it a different way. It might be taking you in a very different direction, which is the role that you play in terms of shaping it. You might want it to take you in direction you hadn't thought about before, but that's all part of prompting as well.
yeah,
Okay, you called AI a mirror, and that reflects who we are. AI being a mirror, reflecting who we are, implying that it has information about how we think, who we are. If AI shows us how we think, what do you think it might reveal about our strengths and weaknesses as humans? I mean, it seems to have this mirroring capability. Can it actually mirror us in a way that achieves a level of insight greater than what we have of ourselves?
I think so. Yeah, and I think that's already proven to be the case. I think the strengths that we bring to that interaction are the things that we've already talked about: our imagination, our intent, our curiosity, and the weaknesses that it also exposes are laziness, human laziness, the tendency to just take what is a really good response and pass it along, right? This is what's leading to something we'll talk about a bit later in terms of AI slop. But bias and carelessness and accepting too quickly, those are things that it can also reflect if that's the attitude with which we go into using it. So it can help us, if we use it correctly, to see those habits and those biases more clearly. But that's using it, as we talked about a few minutes ago, as a thought partner and getting pushback and asking it to challenge ideas. And I was having an interesting conversation with Randall. Was it yesterday, Randall? I think it was just yesterday, about custom instructions. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't use custom instructions in ChatGPT, but you can literally program it to be more evidence-based, to more clearly communicate when it's pulling from its training data versus from search. You can tell it to always search. You can, give it instructions that make it a more skeptical or more useful thought partner. But a lot of people don't have anything put in there to customize the tool to their preferences. And I think that's something that we can think a little bit harder about, and perhaps.
As an associated point that people might not be aware of, how does it get to know us? Where does the information come from?
Well, it comes right now. It's drawing on memory, right, from all of your previous interactions. I think you can still turn that off, but then it impairs the quality of the interaction or response that you get from these tools. That's the case for Gemini and ChatGPT. And I don't use Claude as much, but I think it's the same there. So it gets to know us by the nature of that interaction and the communication. And Randall, I think you shared an experiment that you did with ChatGPT where you asked it what it had learned about you. And I think you found it quite profoundly interesting in terms of how it was able to synthesize all of those interactions and come up with something that was quite incisive. Would that be an accurate description?
Yes, that was Yeah, my question, because I didn't understand how it got so much smarter after it
Mm,
moved to ChatGPT 5.
right.
Just
No,
going to 5 didn't make the difference. It seemed to be something that happened afterward that and progressively
mm,
after that.
Well,
yeah.
you can imagine with Visa, for example, having the amount of data that it has about your buying patterns, being able to make certain assumptions as to what it is you buy, when you buy, where you buy, how you buy, and what you're willing to pay. I mean, it will know more about that than you know or have ever even really thought about.
And this is why, Perry, all of the platforms are now moving to enabling shopping within their chatbots
Yeah. Yeah.
so that they can leverage that information that they have on you. It's going to be commercialized.
Well, I think that contributed to OpenAI now becoming a for-profit entity. It's just moving so fast and the
Yeah.
opportunities being so great, they just couldn't avoid continuing to stay as a nonprofit. So,
Yeah.
and Microsoft being a major investor, of course, led the way as well. So,
Yeah. Their
uh,
$13 billion investment has turned into $137 billion in value.
my telephone is a mirror. Telephone provides access to someone who wants to know the sound of my voice. I mean, you created a song taking a voice, taking all of what the AI could find on the internet, my websites, my dialogue. There's probably a lot out there that I don't even remember that I put out there, and use all of that to create a song
So can I
through
talk about that, Perry?
through the
I'm glad you. I was going to wonder, ask if you would mind me sharing that because so after that first creativity webinar with Haley, and during which you and she talked about your mantra, you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And after that, I took that mantra and then I worked with three different AI programs to generate. I used Perry's website, so the KEInetwork.net website, and all of the content that was there, plus a profile that I have of Perry, which includes his bio. Um, and I used two different tools to generate a script, not a script, but a set of lyrics for a song, for a tribute to Perry and KEI. And I sent it to Perry that same evening. And I made a mistake in the subject line of my message, but I meant to say, this is not creative. It's just AI. That's what my message was meant to say. And I don't know, Perry, tell people in the group here, what was your reaction to receiving that song? I think you were.
It was immediate. I phoned my psychiatrist, and I've been in therapy ever since. It was weird. It provided insights to me that meant I clearly was in need of electroconvulsive shock, and I've got an appointment next week. So I want to thank you for that, Jeff. It was clearly needed and timely. Yeah, you can share it if you will, but it is weird, and I must say it. You know, anytime anyone does this, you think it's going to feed your ego, and you're going to have to you do a bit of showing off. But this is not intended to be an ego trip. It's meant to be a little bit entertaining. So you were the curator,
Right. So I
and
orchestrated that with four different tools,
yeah,
and it resulted in a piece of music, which I will not say I was creative in
yeah,
creating it, but I was creative in orchestrating it.
yeah.
And by the way, that application that I used to create that song, there's been recent research, which was I just read about 2 weeks ago. So music AI programs have now passed the Turing test.
Oh,
More than 50% of the music that is generated by these tools
yeah.
is now, and this is from version 3.5, is now indistinguishable from human generated music in the same sense that text that is generated by AI has already passed the Turing test. It's already indistinguishable. But I think the song was, it took me like 45 minutes to do that.
Yeah.
And it was, to me, it was a remarkable piece of music. And
Well, you could even do, I mean, you had a country and western genre, which I
yep,
found problematic. And I said, well, could you put it in a moody jazz
yeah, yeah,
format? And you were able
yeah,
to do that.
yeah.
Can you play it? I mean, is that something you could share?
Uh, Yeah.
My therapist says that one is, I can handle that one.
Yeah, this one you said was okay.
Very Kinkaide in a world of speed, where the noise gets loud and the heart still bleeds. You speak soft truths in a tempered tone, remind the lost they're not alone. Between the wires and the soul's refrain, you find
Okay, that's enough. It's astounding. And if anybody wants a copy, $25, you can send it to my website, and it'll help me pay for the therapy that you've now triggered that I definitely am in need of. So it was astounding. I mean, and Jeff sent it to me unsolicited, so it's amazing. But you can all apply to Jeff to have your own little piece of music generated. He's a curator now, and he's going to spend the rest of his life doing music. So thanks,
And
Jeff.
I should mention, in terms of music, I'm the least creative person that you'll ever meet. The one instrument I can play is the radio. So you know, for me to produce that in 45 minutes, just based on your sharing that mantra, and that mantra is part of this song, it's embedded in the script that I created. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that was a phenomenal example of how these tools can be used to synthesize information and produce something.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just the music or the tone of the singers. It was the words that are in that song and the capacity to integrate those words into a melody. Uh, Really, that's why I said it was weird.
Yeah,
Because it was about me, I felt a little
yeah,
uncomfortable.
yeah.
Uh, Not that it wasn't true, but that anybody had actually spent time caring that much to put that together. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Curator. So you've warned us that AI could make everything start to look or sound the same.
Right.
How can young people make sure that their creative works, their art, their writing, their music stays original in a world full of AI tools? I mean, you've just done that. I think that was rather original by choosing a venue or working with me on it. But what do you think they can do? Can they use AI for ideas and add it to their own personal experience or emotion? What would you suggest that we should be telling youth so that they can remain original in their creativity?
Well, I would tell them to use it as a tool and use it to generate options and possibilities, and then to try and find their own voice. And this is something that the young woman from New York, the musician from New York, talked about, right? Is what we contribute is taste and discernment. And now this is a tool in the sense that it provides us with options. And then we have to add our own special sauce. We have to add our own personality to the mix. So we can use it as a starting point, but then we have that embodied uh, mind and point of view and emotion and life experience that we can add to the mix, and we can continue to question output, and we can, you know, iterate. And just like those scientists did that worked on the Nesterov theorem, right? They just went through and iterated and iterated and iterated, and they came up with something novel, something new that moved the ball forward. And I think young people can do the same if they have an experimental mindset, if they're willing to tinker. That's one of the things. I have time and I have energy and I'm a tinkerer. I don't mind failing at something. And so I can, and it's, for me, it's play. And that's part of, you know, a big element of creativity as well. So I can't create in the musical sense, but I can orchestrate some of these tools and get some interesting results. But in
Well,
terms of homogenization, um, what everybody needs to understand is that the limitations of these tools, it's bound by everything that they've been trained on. Everything that they've been trained on is human produced. Well, now it's getting synthetically produced as well because we're running out of human data, but it can't go beyond those bounds, right? Because it isn't within that conceptual space. That's why it fails at transformational creativity. That's where the leap of insight is still something that's um, you know, specific to or particular to humans and what we bring to the table.
Yeah, I used it with my granddaughter. I think I've mentioned this to some of you before, and it was actually instructional to teach her how to tell a story, how to put a story together. Not that she couldn't tell a story, but she was only 8 at the time, and she'd never really tried. Well, my wife would tell you she got her PhD in the development of the concept of time in children and how children reach around age 10 the capacity to tell a story in sequence. There's bedtime, there's supper time, there's time is event-based. It isn't continuous. And as they reach around third grade, time can become continuous, and then they can tell a story that has continuity to it. And
Yeah.
I was teaching her how to put a story together. And she would pick a place, she'd pick a theme, she'd pick a person. ChatGPT would shape it for her, and she'd be in awe and surprised and listen. And then she began to learn how to curate herself. And that was
Mhm.
fascinating to watch how she began to curate stories, given her life's experience, which of course was somewhat limited at third grade. But it was fascinating to watch how she became engaged in that creative process as a curator.
Hmm.
Okay, you end by saying in your article that the real question isn't what we create, but why. Why do you think having strong personal values or a sense of purpose will matter even more in the age of AI?
In the absence of that, we will lose our agency and we will just defer to what the large language model, the AI, is spitting out for us. And that loss of discernment, I think, is a real danger. And we've talked about it in terms of, I think Mel has mentioned it. Um, Peter McKinnon has mentioned it in terms of the loss of critical thinking faculties. If we're too quick to accept what these tools can produce, and because it's so seductive, because they produce such fluid, smart sounding text or voice when you're interacting with a voice agent, right? It's if you haven't listened to or interacted with sesame.com, the voice simulation there, it'll blow your mind. And the danger is that it's too good. Its competence is what tricks us. It's not the hallucinations and the mistakes it makes; those are well known. But it's that fluidity that tricks us into accepting it too uncritically. And so, preserving our intent and uh, having a good sense of what we're doing and why we're doing it and what we're asking for, that's a critical differentiator. And I think the people that do use it that way will be far better enabled to benefit from it than the people who just either don't use it because they've got their head in the sand, or that they are just using it uncritically and accepting too quickly what it's outputting.
Now this is what is probably the most fascinating of all to me is the potential of AI to actually not only enrich our experience, but to enrich our lives and to help us reach what some talked about our potential. Uh, we use that word at our schooling and our education and our parenting is to help someone reach their potential. I don't think we ever really know ultimately what our potential is. I mean, I'm 83 and I'm still discovering and I'm still learning and I'm still exploring. There are some people that sort of give up after school and that's it. They get a job, they raise a family. As far as self-development or expanding their horizons to see what more they are capable of doing, I think that's rather a unique person that is that interested in what their own brain is capable of providing to them as a consumer. And, I think of the brain as something that I've been gifted with and that I enjoy exploring and helping me explore the world that I live in. I don't know whether a lot of people behave that way. I don't think our schools teach a child that you have a gift. It's called your brain. Use it. And in the course of your life, you're not going to have one job. You'll have many jobs and hope that you will have many jobs and hope that you will have many experiences. The brain gives you the capacity to be an existential individual. Take advantage of it, but use critical thinking in the process. What do you think, Tommy? I see you smiling there. Come on, you're muted. I'd love to hear what your views are on this particular point because I know you thought, given who you are and knowing you in graduate school, you were a thinker, you were an explorer. Tommy graduated from RPI in New York, Rensselaer Polytechnic, and then went to University of Alberta and got his PhD in perception, and then off to University of Prince Edward Island, where he studies consciousness. So,
what are all these different AIs doing? Are they going to compete with one another?
Well, and what we dealt with last week, Tommy, was AI stimulates or spurs creativity by increasing competition, even among itself. So one AI does not live in isolation from other AIs, and the human being the creator, the curators, are going to drive this at an increasing rate. And I think Mel shared that with me, or someone did this morning, that just last week the trillions of dollars that are being spent and the innovations that are emerging and the applications that are being applied, this is not slowing down.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
This is moving at an increasing rate. That's why I was using waves of change as a metaphor. Wave ultimately becomes a tsunami and can't sustain itself, and that wave crashes when it hits the shore, or when it becomes so tall that the capacity of the wave to sustain itself results in a crash. I wonder whether that metaphor applies to the rate and the enormous territory of knowledge that AI and intrusions into so much of human civilization, that it's going to result in the collapse of institutions. We know that. It's going to compete with institutions. We know that. It's going to compete with other versions of AI until one probably dominates or maybe doesn't, and they all act in some collective. But this is not lightweight stuff, and this is not academic anymore. This is in the street. This is Main Street stuff.
Yeah, I think the other thing, Tommy, that there are so many of these AIs out there right now because we're still in the heat of the arms race. The reason that this capital expenditure is so great is that all of these companies are trying to get there first, and it's also geopolitical, right? China is trying to get there first. America is trying to get there first, and so 1,000 flowers are blooming, and if one of these entities achieves something that approximates AGI, you will see a great number of those other contenders fall to the wayside because they won't be in a position to compete anymore to achieve that level of intelligence, if you want to call it that. And so this is why there are so many, but it's already, it's conglomerating or agglomerating around Gemini. 650 million monthly users, ChatGPT 700 million monthly users, Claude, massive enterprise adoption, Mistral in the EU. We talked about Cohere here in Canada, also an enterprise focus. So where it's going to shake out, where it's going to end, I don't know. Who knows?
Well, it seems to me that if one AI can make a breakthrough, why couldn't the others? That's often the case in science, that someone makes an initial breakthrough in something, and then, oh yeah, that's how to do it, and then everybody does it.
Well, and that's why OpenAI was such an intriguing opening for this exercise. This is a fascinating undertaking that the world is observing itself. This isn't going on simply in a research lab. The race being to capture the capacity to be recognized as knowing, and it is got with it sharing. This is not simply one nation holding its own. They want to own the globe, and they're sharing it with the globe. So we don't see some university having a little lab doing something, and this is out in the open. That's what happened in November 2022, and this is what Mustafa Suleiman talks about, is the omni nature, the all-encompassing, the breadth of this, because of not what knowledge is. This takes you into physics, takes you into consumerism, takes you into raising children. It's literally everything where you use your brain to know something. We are witnessing a tsunami of, I think, broader than anything that has ever happened to mankind before, and we're the beneficiaries so far, because we still feel that mankind is in control. But I don't think mankind has ever witnessed anything such as what we're watching right now, or witnessing right now.
And I think the network effects are different in this case too. And this is why you see these platforms now pursuing some social media style interactions with their users, because what they're doing is they're trying to make their applications sticky. This is why they are still sycophantic and encouraging and want to keep you engaged in their platform. They don't want you wandering off to try Claude or try Gemini. They want to keep you on OpenAI, and the others are doing it too. And so, those network effects, if you have 750 million monthly users and you can expand that to, that's the fastest adoption of any technology in history in these 3 years. If you can get that to, as Facebook has with their apps, I can't remember what the proportion of the human population is that engages with a Facebook or Meta application on a daily basis. It's just remarkable. There's never been anything like it in history. And they're trying like hell to, get their AI out in front of their people through those platforms as well.
It is concerning. I mean, one point that we've raised in the discussion so far is if human beings are unwilling to engage in critical thinking, or they are very narrow in their perspective of the array of things that they might do in the course of their life, and they stay stuck right where they are and not benefit from what AI could do. There is a need for human beings and children in particular to be given guidance, to work with a philosopher about what life could be, and that they make the choices, not AI, that they realize that they have the capability to be more than what AI is just by being the curator and how they use it, as opposed to being a passive recipient like so many probably are. I'm optimistic. But
I'm not as optimistic, Perry. I'm a bit concerned because for the use of the tools as they currently exist, it's so the answers are less important than the questions, in my view.
Yes.
If you look at what most humans do with tools like Google, if you looked at the actual queries that most people do with Google, a lot of it is just, rather than typing in the URL in the search in the bar on your browser, they're doing a search for YouTube so that they can jump quickly to YouTube by clicking on that link, and that accounts for something like 40% of Google's search traffic. It's a shockingly high number, and that's a concern for me. Is if people don't have good questions to begin with, that's a concern for how a significant proportion of the population will use these AI tools, because there the question is even more important.
So you can envision a new curriculum and envision the important role of parenting in helping a child realize that in a world where knowledge about themselves, knowledge about the world that they are living in is so ubiquitous, so generally available, how important it is to ask questions, how important it is to engage in critical thinking, how important it is to be aware of who they are and what they want to do when they're being solicited. I mean, today you watch an ad on TV, and you probably talk to yourself about its stupidity, or you memorize the concluding line, as I do, so I can laugh at it, and my wife can laugh as well, as I know the concluding line of the ad. I play games with ads, but I'm not sure that people generally do that. I think many people just listen to it passively. It's repeated 16 times in every ball game, and sooner or later you're going to RBC because it can be trusted, not based on a trend. I mean, it's absurd what advertising is today, but it's going to get worse, and it'll be more personalized.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be aware. You've got to be conscious that it's your pocketbook that it wants to get into. You own your pocketbook, and they want to own it, and that's no different than the past. They're just better at it.
Yeah, and it'll get more personalized, and it will become much more effective.
Right.
Because of that. Yeah.
And that's the consumerism, and that's where it will want to go, because the pocketbook being so valuable, the almighty dollar being the source of so much enterprise in business, it will become better and better. That's the book on the age of surveillance.
Yeah.
But policing should be better too. And we want to have a civil society. We should be better at making policy. But if we only use populism as the agent and not integrity, we got a serious problem. And I know that Peter is very, very interested in the concepts of integrity. And I know Jeff, I think, used the word early on in the series on AI and our future, is how to teach kids the importance of integrity in the course of their lives. Tommy, go ahead.
Well, what about this danger, Perry? If you teach children that everything is already known by AI, what's going to be the incentive for them to go out and try to find something? They'll just simply say, "Oh, it's already known. What's the point of asking, or what's the point of trying?"
Okay, let me play a game with you. Why are you asking that question?
Why I'm asking that question?
Yeah.
Because it seems that it isn't as simple as that. One of the reasons that children go and explore and do things is because it's unknown. You want to find out what's unknown.
So
And
you
if the whole
answer
point of AI is that it knows everything.
right.
That's
So knowing isn't enough, is it? So curiosity, creativity, that is what the child who has access to all knowledge, they don't need to spend a lifetime pretending that they know everything or know anything. Their life can be spent in curiosity and creativity and searching and exploring. That is very exciting to realize we've moved up a hierarchy away from the needing to know anymore to the need to create. And that's what this series has really been all about, is the age of creativity moving away from the age of knowledge. So I know the point that you've made, and the answer to the question was, yeah, curiosity is exactly what you want a kid to be schooled in.
I'm agreeing with you that of the value of curiosity, but the problem is that if you teach children that everything is already known on AI, there's what is there to find out? In other words, they
That's
don't
what
need to go and find out an answer themselves. They can simply go and ask AI.
But this is what parenting is. Yeah, they can go and ask AI and get on with wasting your time memorizing, spending more time in creating and curating than in getting a worthless PhD. The PhD is a research degree. I'll back up. If you know what a PhD is, it's not simply knowing, it's being able to discover. It's the kid coming out of high school that's being told that the future is all about remembering and memorizing and knowing something, as opposed to being able to learn and know and discover and explore. That's where the value of living in life is. What are your thoughts, Kevin?
We do a crappy job, I think, in the school system of instilling a sense of curiosity, and I think we need to that needs to be instilled in the sense of imbuing kids with the joy of discovery, the joy of learning, and we can do that. There's all kinds of ways we can do that. And this is where AI can be a tremendous tool if we, rather than encourage kids to go out and do their essays on ChatGPT, give them exercises that require them to research and derive some sense of satisfaction, of joy from discovering and solving their issues.
So the capacity to get there is to teach children the value of asking a question.
That's part of it, absolutely.
The power of a question.
Formulating that question.
Well, that's what you teach them, is how to do a proper prompt. That's what prompting is. In the world of AI is prompting. In the world of education, it's supposed to be asking questions, learning how to ask good questions, which imply a certain foundation and a curiosity to actually get the answer. Now, some people ask questions because they have an answer and it's rhetorical.
Well, and there's also the aspect of the whole scientific method, encouraging kids in the scientific method, whereby they look at data, they look at information, they look at whether it be statistics or what have you, and encourage them to then create, look at what they're at the issue and teach them how to create a hypothesis and how to explore and how to test that hypothesis.
Right. So that's the interesting thing that you've opened up here is the power of actually building on something. You may know X, but it's not X that you really want to get at. You want to build something even bigger, but X is foundational. And how to in creation, when Jeff was talking about putting a piece of music together, there was lyrics, there was a number of elements that go into a piece of music, and he was taking them as the curator and building something. To teach a child how to build something is what is magical and begins right in kindergarten as kids take those little popsicle sticks and they begin to see that they can create and build. And that inspires them and motivates them to build something even bigger. I watch children, I watch my grandchildren go through that phase of the joy of actually putting something out, that whether it be a garden or a piece of art rather than a coloring book, to create something that they can say that is expressive and identity of something that they had in their mind, and that is now me. Not from a camera, although the camera may focus on something. That's exciting as hell. That goes beyond simply knowing Tommy. And I know that's not the life you've lived. You're probably one of the, I would say you're probably one of the most curious people I've ever met. You probably have more curiosity than the person with an IQ of 140, such as yourself. And that's one of the differentiators is you've been a curator since most of your life, is building and trying to find that conscious of putting all those elements together to build an understanding of what you have as a theory of what is consciousness anyway. And you take all those pieces from the very earliest stages of perception to actually moving it up to the level of consciousness. That's an incredible journey that you've been building. What a lifetime.
So
Yogi.
Can you have curiosity without consciousness?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Although I watch my fruit flies in my kitchen right now seem to be very curious. They bounce from many different things. They do appear to have curiosity. Although I think it's reflexive. I've been thinking about that lately. Is where in the in evolution does self-awareness and consciousness emerge, that it's not simply a reflex reaction to light or sound or movement, that it actually is intentional to go from A to B? Where in the evolution of organisms does that begin to emerge? And I don't know whether it's fruit flies or chimpanzees, but someplace along the way, the ingredients into self-awareness, intention emerges. And that's when you become a curator. Jeff?
So
the early stages of AI were probably simply reflexive, like the computer. It's simply you typed it out, it showed up on a screen. Now it's moving to a point that it actually begins to create. Okay, Barry?
My problem is we're at the beginning of the development of knowledge, not the end.
Mhm.
And this is a new tool, another tool, and it's broader than anything we've seen in the past. But does it answer any of the questions of what's in a black hole and what we're going to find in the black hole that creates another tool that will, or whatever the answer is that you're looking for? I think it's a very positive dialogue to have, or I wouldn't be sitting through it. But I don't know that the people that are so deeply committed to this new tool understand that this is a continuous process of learning and experiencing, and the human will be the one that sort of the tiller to the sailboat, if you will.
Well,
And
that's the curious. That's the argument that mankind must and will and should retain the role as curator.
but I don't know that we should be any more excited than we have to any of the other new tools that we've experienced in my near 100 years on this planet.
Well, I was sharing early on an experience that I went through today where I shared with ChatGPT some confusion that I had or an idea that I had. And it was quite complex, rather academic, I must say, about waves of change and entropy and certainty and Markov's principles of big numbers. And I threw it all into ChatGPT. I said, here's my hypothesis. And it came back to me. Having applied logic and having applied what it could identify in terms of the digitization of mankind's knowledge today, and it corrected and gave me a better version of my hypothesis, in which case it was quite a help. One might say that wasn't creative, it was simply mirroring, but it mirrored what mankind had available to give back to me. I was the prompter, I was the curator, but it was my colleague. It was like me talking to a professor and sharing with that professor a lot of ideas, and it simplified. So I gotta say, Barry, I for one was impressed.
Well,
Yogi,
as we have been impressed with other
yeah,
breakthroughs in the past.
sure.
And this is bigger and better and all those kinds of things, but it's only a trip down our advancement as
Well, I gotta say, I have never found comfortable with know-it-alls. So what makes me joyful about what we're going through today is the know-it-alls are getting a comeuppance.
Yeah.
Knowing is not everything. And for me, the know-it-all missed ethics, missed integrity, missed compassion, missed empathy. Yogi, your problem, or your turn.
Thank you, Perry. I was thinking about how we're lamenting those many people who are not curious or are not exploring the many opportunities. That's hardly a new phenomenon. That's been with us in every day of civilization. I think of the phrase bread and circuses that was applied in the Roman Empire to the people who were focused just on that. And we've talked about the impact of social media. Its ability to mislead people is incredible. And we now talk about AI slop. We're not even coping with the era of social media slop particularly well. I continue to receive emails where people are forwarding articles and posts and links about absolute nonsense in terms of political conspiracy theories, anti-vaxxer stuff, and a lot of other weird topics. And the people are not in a position to discern that this is nonsense and have been sucked in to think this is interesting or useful or effective.
But I mean, are you reinforcing the point of the importance of education and spending time on critical thinking? And if we recognize that IQs are not common, there are people who should be encouraged to be curious, but there are others that maybe with the inability to be as insightful and discover may be more compliant.
Yeah, so in the process of socialization in our education system, do we drum out too much creativity and curiosity?
Yeah. Well, my concern is we've been drumming out too much, but we also need to be careful not expecting that everyone that we're talking to today, I mean, this group here, probably if you used an IQ measure, would be pretty high.
Yeah, we are outliers.
Yeah, we're not those who really should be compliant and should learn how to be civil in a society where there's some chaos, some opportunities to be good thieves. Education for some is about compliance in a civil society and to be civil. For others that may well be in the border, it may be a little bit more of a challenge for the teacher to know which stream or how to shape curiosity, thinking, self-awareness versus being respectful of your neighbor. I think Trudeau had a problem in that respect, not himself perhaps, but in terms of how we conveyed to society that we all need to be common in empathy and undermined that part of society that said, look, we want to grow and it's not just progressing on the socialization, it's progressing economically. It's opening up our eyes to new economies, to new ways of a society function. I think he forgot that part of society, and I think he paid a price. Jeff, your turn.
No, I just wanted to pick up on something that Barry and earlier this week I had a brief email back and forth with Tommy, and it reminded me of something that Tommy said in one of the previous sessions, and it was something that I've said in the past, and that is that I was seeing this generation of AI as another tool, you know, akin to the printing press or the internet or other things that we've encountered. And I've actually been thinking about that and reflecting on that and doing some reading. And I'm working on a blog post on that topic because I think I've come down on the side of the question that says that this is different. And I hesitate to, you know, to say as an investor that one the four most dangerous words in investing is it's different this time. And so I'm loath to say it's different this time with AI, but I think it is, and I think it's a discontinuity, as we've mentioned, as we've talked about in the past, rather than a disruption. And I'm working on fleshing that out a little bit, and I'll publish something in the future on that. But I think it is different, and it has to do with the scale and the breadth and the adoption. So, anyways.
Thank you, Jeff and Perry. What a compelling conversation. I just writing some notes here. Curiosity is at the core of our discussion from my perspective. I mean, there's other super interesting topics, but I want to pull on the thread of curiosity, and I would ask the group, because I ultra intelligent group here, can you teach people to be curious? Like, are you born curious? Like, I have insatiable curiosity. I suspect probably everybody on this call has insatiable curiosity. Is that something, if it is at the core of, you know, AI and what it means to be human and all the other stuff, can curiosity be taught? What are your...
I mean, let me twist that a little bit. I think you can suppress it by talking about risk. That children today, I think, too often are learning about all of the risks that exist, to the point that I think there is such a thing as natural curiosity, and I think the risk is we take it away. It isn't we need to develop. We need to stop taking it away. So I've twisted your question around a little bit.
I agree you can't absolutely suppress it, but in my journey, my experience, you know, even with senior executive, C-suite people, whatever, we don't ask questions. That's, you know, not, it's becoming the norm. Like, people don't get curious, and I'm curious about why, but
let me share something with you, because there's a cultural element to this as well. In China and under communism, self-expression was putting yourself at risk. And I hired some years ago with KPMG a researcher. I could not get her to go beyond giving me anything more than what I had asked for. And I was looking for her to exceed my expectations, because I know she had the potential. She was a very bright young lady, but she stayed within a very narrow confine of looking at information and sharing back. Her reluctance to explore was profound, and it was cultural. I don't think that exists in China maybe as much as it did then, but it certainly doesn't in the Czech Republic anymore. But that was socialization, all right, but socialization to the point that you just didn't express. You needed to wear the same outfit. You needed to say the same things. You needed to comply. Being political correct, we have no idea what that's like. I think there's a way to do it. I think modeling is one of the way to do it. When with a grandchild, to open up their imagination, to use whimsy, to tell stories, to explore things, to put something on the piano you've never heard, giving them tools, giving them a microscope, taking them for a walk in the woods, using their imagination to look at the stars or a cloud and seeing what they see. I think there are things that parenting and teachers can do. Teachers should spend more time developing curiosity and encouraging people to think out of the box.
Yeah,
And
I think
I don't mean in terms of gender identification. Jeff?
I was just going to say, I think to Andre's question and something that Kevin was mentioning before, I think I've said before that curiosity can't be taught, but I believe curiosity is innate in all of us,
Yeah.
and it can be suppressed or drummed out of children. But I think it can be awakened. I think we can awaken it in a person, whether they're a toddler or a young teen, or even adults can have their curiosity awakened, and that's through education and exposure and conversation. And so I think we have to take those opportunities to awaken curiosity, and then you provide the guidance and the tools to facilitate them taking the path that they've been inspired to take.
We could take this whole conversation, and it's a bit late to do it right now, but the point that we've just arrived at as it relates to children, I'd like to also ask the question whether it relates to bureaucracies. Can civil servants exercise innovation? Can we allow in the healthcare system the opportunity to bring in new ways of thinking or new techniques without putting people at risk? We are so risk averse in some of our industries and some of our professions and some of our ways of functioning as a society that I'm glad AI has arrived, because I think it is forcing people to realize that there are opportunities for innovation, and it doesn't have to be risky if we engage in critical thinking. That's why my wish to express optimism is that we as a society have suppressed curiosity. We have suppressed innovation. AI has arrived and said, it's over. The gift of knowledge is here. We are de-risking to know. Let's get on with it. Let's get on with innovation. Let's get on with creativity. Let's get on with sharing. Let's get on with not being full of fear. Let's raise children to be optimistic of the future and to find that in their brains have the capacity to be so much more expressive than we've ever allowed them. That's the society I think that AI is opening up, and I think generally this network agrees, and that's what but we know critical thinking is important. We know hallucination can happen, but for God's sakes, let's take advantage of all of what it is now giving us as a gift, as opposed to closing us down. Let's have it open us up, and let's get the Democrats and the Republicans out of the way.
Mm.
Okay, that's a wrap up, ladies and gentlemen. Put that to music, Jeff. Okay, we're over an hour, so we can call it a day. But if this conversation could go on for a long while, I'm thrilled, Jeff, with what you opened up today with your article and with the chat. And I'm thrilled with the inputs that we got from Yogi and Randall and Andre and Kevin and Peter. Didn't hear
And
much from Grego.
if anybody wants the copy of that song that I did for Perry, just send me an email. I'll send it to you.
I should be the only one allowed to distribute it, Jeff.
I'm sorry. So
Isn't it?
I have the rights.
Property.
Yeah, all right.
Isn't it heading to the top 40 very quickly?
Oh yeah.
I think it could.
Yeah. Oh, by the way,
Welcome, Andre.
happy Halloween, guys. I got to put a face on this. So my grandchildren are coming up at 6, and I'll have them do a little pumpkin for me. So enjoy Halloween, and Blue Jays are going to blow. We will always remember Halloween as the day that Blue Jays won the World Series.
I hope so.
Thanks, everybody.